Hey there, welcome to neonmushroom. Welcome back if you've been here before. I'm Adrian, and today we have some Commander / EDH gameplay for you guys. Anyone who got the video I uploaded last, you may have been expecting Calvin to upload a video yesterday. The game he's editing was long and had a few errors, so he has a lot of work to do in the editing bay. Expect that very soon, maybe even tomorrow if we can work it out correctly. But for today, let's go ahead and just end this part and go look at the players, the decks those players are playing, and the opening hands they've decided to keep. Alright, first up we have Ryan playing his O-Kagachi 5-color Spirits Tribal deck. He keeps a 7-card hand with an Esper Panorama, a Bant Panorama, Forest, Mountain, Cascading Cataracts, Nikiona, and a copy of That Which Was Taken. Then we have Jacob Duffy playing Alela. He keeps a 6-card hand with Sea of Clouds, Reflecting Pool, Swamp, Swan Song, Dance of the Manse, Mystic Forge, and he does have to ship a copy of Mycosynth Lattice to the bottom of his library per the London Mulligan. Next up, I'll be playing Ajdin's Animar deck. I keep a 7-card hand with Evolution Sage, Peregrine Drake, Ethereum Horn Sorcerer, Cavern of Souls, Rootbound Crag, Flooded Strand, and a Verdant Catacombs. And we've seen this one before. We've got Calvin with his Edgar Markov deck. He keeps a 6-card hand with Land Tax, Sky Marcher Aspirant, Blood Artist, Command Tower, Godless Shrine, Prismatic Vista, and he has to ship a copy of Fabled Passage to the bottom of his library for mulliganing to 6. Ryan's lucky enough to win the die roll, so he's going to play Basic Mountain as his land for turn, and move the turn over to Jake, who draws and plays Sea of Clouds. After that, I'll draw a card. I'm going to play Flooded Strand as my land for turn, opting to not crack it quite yet and pass to Calvin, who draws, plays Command Tower, then taps it and deploys Land Tax. After that point, we'll move it back to Ryan for the second turn cycle. Ryan's going to play Esper Panorama. He's going to opt to immediately crack it, search his library for a basic island, and put it into play tapped. After that, we're going to move over to Jake's turn. He'll draw a card for turn. He'll play Watery Grave tapped as his land for turn. He'll try to pass to me, but before he can, I do want to crack that Flooded Strand and get a tropical island, put it into play. After that, I'll bin the Flooded Strand and we'll move to my turn. I'll draw a card, then on my first main phase, I'll play Rootbound Crag. With no other actions, we'll move to Calvin's second turn. He will trigger Land Tax and get one basic land of each type. He'll add those lands to his hand, he'll move to his draw step and draw his 4th card for the turn, play a Plains, tap it, and then play a Soul Ring. After that point, he's going to tap out, and he's going to play Blood Artist. This will trigger his Eminence ability on his commander. He'll let the floating mana drain and pass the turn over to Ryan. Ryan's going to play Basic Forest as his land for turn, and tap for 3 to cast Kodama's Reach. He'll search for the remaining 2 different basic land types that he needs, putting the Plains into play and the Swamp into his hand. After achieving all 5 colors, he's going to pass the turn over to Jake. Jake will untap, upkeep, draw for turn, play a Reflecting Pool, then he's going to tap out for an Empyrean Eagle. With nothing else, he passes the turn to me. I will untap and draw my card for turn, then I'm going to play Command Tower as my land for turn. At this point, I think it's time to cast Animar, since all of my opponents play black and white, so it's probably fairly safe. We'll move the turn to Calvin, who's going to trigger Land Tax and only get a Swamp and a Mountain. After that point, I'll add those to hand and draw his 3rd card for turn. He'll play Basic Swamp as his land for turn, then I'll tap that Command Tower for white to play Sky Marcher Aspirant. This is going to trigger his commander's Eminence ability. He'll make a 1/1 Vampire, and then I'll attack Ryan with the non-summoning sick Vampire. With nothing else, we'll pass the turn to Ryan. He'll untap, play a Swamp. Whoever says you need dual lands to have a perfect 5-color mana base. He'll play Nikiona, destroying that land tax a little too late. Then we'll pass over to Jake's turn. Jake will untap, draw, and play a Swamp as his land for turn. Then he's going to tap out for his commander, which will pump his Empyrean Eagle, and the Eagle will pump his commander. So when he attacks me, it's going to be for 3 damage. With nothing else, I will untap and draw a card for turn, and play Cavern of Souls naming Hydra. Then I'm going to tap all of my mana, using that Cavern on Hydra, to play Voracious Hydra for 2, triggering my commander. When it enters the battlefield, I'll have it fight Calvin's Blood Artist, and when I do, the Blood Artist will die, so Calvin will point that Blood Artist trigger at me, gaining a life. We'll pass the turn to Calvin, who will play Basic Mountain as his land for turn. Here he comes. Calvin casts Edgar from the command zone, and he decides to get right into the red zone with him, attacking Jake for 5 damage after triggering his Edgar, and putting a +1/+1 counter on each vampire he controls. After that point, he's got no other plays, so he passed the turn over to Ryan. Ryan will play a Cascading Cataracts as his land for turn, and now he's going to tap out and play his commander. That's going to trigger his Nikiona, and he's going to put it back into his hand. At this point, we'll move over to Jake's turn. Jake's going to untap, draw a card, and then he's going to tap out yet again, this time for Urza, Lord High Artificer. It's going to trigger when it enters the battlefield and makes him a Mox Sapphire on a stick. Then he'll get into the red zone with the Eagle and his commander at Calvin, gaining 3 life and dealing 6 to Calvin. We'll move to my turn, and I'm going to tap for 2 mana and cast Evolution Sage for its reduced cost. This is going to trigger Animar and it gets a +1/+1 counter. Then I'm going to go ahead and play Verdant Catacombs as my land for turn, triggering Evolution Sage, and I'll proliferate my creatures. I'll crack the Verdant Catacombs, losing a life, to get a taiga into play. When that happens, it triggers Evolution Sage again, and I get to proliferate. After getting those counters on there, I'm going to go ahead and float all of my mana. To be exact, I'll float blue, blue, and red. Then I'm going to cast Peregrine Drake for its reduced cost, leaving blue and red floating, triggering Animar, and then on-tapping all of my lands. With that blue and red, I'll cast Ethereum Horn Sorcerer. That's going to trigger Animar. It has Cascade, and we cascade into a Hydra's Growth. I will cast that, and I will put Hydra's Growth on the Hydra. Speaking of Hydras, I'm going to tap 4 mana, and I'm going to cast Hydrid Krasis, where X equals 8 for its reduced cost, draw 4 cards, and gain 4 life. Then I'll play Hardened Scales.
What does that do again?
Whenever a +1/+1 counter would, I could. After that, we're going to get into the red zone and attack Calvin for 8 with my commander, since he can't block with his white and black creatures. Then we'll move to Calvin's turn. He's going to play Reflecting Pool as his land for turn. I'll put the correct amount of counters on my Hydra. Then Calvin's going to tap for 3 and play Vampire Nighthawk, triggering his commander's ability. After that point, Calvin decides to get into the red zone and swing in at Jake for 16. Jake's going to ask what the power and toughness of each creature is after triggering Edgar's ability. He decides to block a 3/3 with Urza, and then he's going to wind up taking a grand total of 13 damage off of Calvin's board, going to 11 commander damage. Then we'll pass to Ryan's turn. Ryan will play a basic forest as his land for turn, tap for 3 mana, and play Thief of Hope. So when he plays his next creature, which is going to be Nikki Ono again, it's going to trigger and drain gain me for 1, Ryan gains 1. He'll destroy the Hydra's Growth with the Nikki Ono. He'll get into combat and attack Jake for 6 with his commander, and at this point move over to Jake's 6th turn. After untapping and drawing for turn, he'll deploy Basic Plains as his land for turn. Then he's going to tap for 4 mana and play Mystic Forge, triggering his commander and making a fairy. At this point he has no very good combat options, so he's going to go ahead and pass the turn over to me. I'll untap all of my permanents and draw a card for turn. I'm going to play a Basic Forest as my land for turn. Triggering Evolution Sage, I will proliferate. Now because of the Hardened Scales, my proliferation is going to put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature I control. After that point, we're going to tap for green using Cavern on Hydra, and we're going to play Steelbane Hydra for 9 because of our Animar. It's going to come in with 10 counters because of the Hardened Scales, and then I do miss the Animar trigger. Then we're going to tap for 3, it's all going to be green, and we're going to play Craterhoof Behemoth. Nobody has any counter magic, so the Craterhoof does resolve. I'll pull back that Steelbane Hydra because it has Summoning Sickness, and Craterhoof will trigger, giving everything +8/+8 and trample. I'm going to head in combat and attack Calvin with my commander. That's going to deal lethal commander damage if he can't do anything about it. And then I'm going to go ahead and attack Jake for a grand total of 36 damage. And then I'll put everything else at Ryan, which will be a grand total of 42 damage. Now I'm going to let everybody go to blocks. And Ryan actually has no blocks. He's going to let himself die. Jake's going to block in such a way that he blocks a grand total of 15 damage and gains 3 life. This will put him at 1 life. After combat's over, that'll leave Jake as the only living player at 1 life. I'll play Reclamation Sage, destroying the Mystic Forge, triggering Animar, and with no other plays, we'll pass the turn back over to Jake. All Jake needs is a board wipe, but unfortunately he doesn't even have a land drop, so he immediately passes the turn back to me. Now I obviously could try to just kill him here. I do play City of Brass as my land for turn. I'm going to go ahead and proliferate thanks to my Evolution Sage. I want to take some game actions because I really like Ajdin's Animar deck. So I'm going to go ahead and tap for 3, bouncing the Ethereum Horn Sorcerer. Then I'll recast it, triggering Animar and triggering the Ethereum Horn Sorcerer's Cascade ability, and we'll cascade into a very useful Lotus Cobra. I am going to decide to cast that. That's going to trigger the Animar yet again, and with nothing else, I decide that I've taken enough game actions, and I'll get the whole team sideways in at Jake, dealing well above lethal combat damage, winning the game. Back-to-back wins for me are not typical. I got pretty, I don't want to say lucky here. I think lucky is the right word. I got lucky because Ajdin let me use his Animar deck, and this is not typically my playstyle. Before we get into that, I want to go over the game just a little bit and talk about how everyone's decks kind of performed, what they were doing, and in this case, some obvious power level deltas. Because we'll start with Ryan and his 5-color Spirits Tribal deck. The deck's really cool. I actually got to look through it a little bit. But in terms of like raw power level, this is probably closer to like a 5, 4 or 5, somewhere around there. And I think everyone else was playing between the 7 and like 8.5 range. He did do some meaningful things in the game. One thing I was really impressed with was his ability to generate rainbow mana on turn 5 for like a budget of like 25 cents. He just used Panoramas, what's the name of the brand spell that's not Cultivate? Kodama's Reach, and basic lands, and it was awesome. He was able to cast his commander on curve. He even was able to cast a few spells before then, In terms of game actions, he actually did quite a bit. Just none of it was very meaningful in the face of both Calvin and I were being very loud and aggressive. And even Jake, I wasn't able to tell based on what was in his hand, what he might have been able to do. But we'll get into that in just a second. But he was playing some cards that are known for being very powerful in our format. So Ryan was probably the odd man out in terms of power level. His decks currently are weaker in power level than everyone else we play with. And we're kind of just allowing it for now while we've got this, you know, the whole, the virus thing going on in the world. We've got a limited selection of players to play with, and we have limited time to prep the players for games because we're cranking out so many games here in November. But Ryan wants to upgrade a lot of his decks, and we're going to be helping him do that. So if you want to follow Ryan's journey from being like in the 5 and 6 zone to the 7 and 8 zone, then hang out with us. Next up, I'll talk about Jake. He was playing his Alela deck. I think this is the first time we've seen this deck, and I'm not sure what his build is exactly, other than like artifacts, value, town style of deck. He had a really good curve. He went Empyrean Eagle into Alela, into Urza, and even had a Mystic Forge. A lot of these cards in a vacuum are pretty reasonably powerful. It just didn't really stack up to Calvin's Synergy, or I guess I also had Synergy. So he kind of fell behind. There's a good chance that game was just slower. Like if I wasn't on such an oppressive commander like Animar, I've never played the card, I didn't know it could do that. Or Calvin wasn't on such an oppressive commander like, what's his name? Edgar. That opening hand may have been enough to really generate a game win in a lot of scenarios. But in this case, that wasn't the case. Moving over next to me, we had Calvin, who, if you looked at that game, if you just looked at his plays in isolation, you'd probably guess that he won the game. He curved out, he had a land tax, he spent his first 2 turns drawing like 9 cards. His curve was awesome. He kept triggering Edgar's Eminence ability, because that's what that card does. And after casting Edgar, he had a demanding board presence. However, I was playing Animar. Animar's most important line of text in this entire game, well, maybe second most important hold for the actual ability he has. But it's pro black and white, meaning that Calvin was basically defenseless if I tried to target him. He was the loudest player other than me, so I decided to kill him first. I guess I killed him at the same time as Ryan. The Animar deck did everything the Animar deck was supposed to do. I thought that I was for sure going to get just curb stomped the second I played that Animar on curve. I figured, oh, there's no way they don't remove this. But looking at the pod, any removal they may have had would have been black or white. So it was actually a really safe play. After that point, as my curve went on and I generated value for Animar, these Hydras I started casting just got huge, and then I eventually drew into Craterhoof Behemoth. There's really not much to say about it. Craterhoof wins games, and in this case, it won the game. I think when I attacked, I could have done combat a little bit better. Ryan technically could have blocked in a way where he was left at 2 life, but the way his hand was set up and his deck was built, he knew he was dead either way, so he decided to just take the damage. And I think if I had, because I did miss some hardened scales triggers, I think if I had hit everything and played perfectly, a perfect player I am not, but if I had done that, I may have won the game on that turn that I attack a Craterhoof Behemoth. Ajdin's a pretty sweet deck designer, especially when it comes to like super mid-rangey, grindy value town decks. He's really good at building those, and he really highlighted that for me with this Animar deck. So I'm really excited to see more play for it in the future. Next time we had this Animar deck, now that I know just how powerful it is, we're gonna set it up in some pods that are maybe a little bit more more angled towards the, you know, that between 7 and 8.5 power level zone. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for, I don't know, subscribing. We got a lot of subscribers recently, and we really appreciate it. And I hope you guys are looking forward to the next upload, hopefully tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for watching again. And as always, I'll see you next time.